and welcome back to the How the Race Was Won podcast. I'm Dane Cash, and the Giro d'Italia is underway. The Vuelta Femenina is in the books already. Grand Tour season is well and truly here. Aren't you excited about that, bike racing analyst extraordinaire Cosmo Catalano?
I was not necessarily excited for it prior to. Well, I was pretty excited for the Vuelta, but the Giro I had my doubts about, many of which were assuaged on the first stage. But I think we'll talk about that as the show goes on.
Oh, we're going to talk about the Giro today. That's good. Okay, yeah, good plan. We will get into how the first two stages of the race were won. That's on the docket today. Obviously, we are recording only a little ways into the race with two stages down. I don't know that there's that much that we can say, but both of those first two stages were quite interesting, actually. So I think fortunately there will be some stuff to talk about from those two stages. We'll look a little bit at the Vuelta Femenina, which was another entertaining race with several entertaining individual stages, even if the overall battle, not entertaining, but it definitely kind of played out. Well, the winner was the one that everybody expected, but that doesn't mean it wasn't an interesting race. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, obviously, We'll Talk has plenty more on the Vuelta and some bonus episode action as well. You get to hear from a bunch of the riders in the race. Pretty cool. We will touch on Eschborn-Frankfurt a little bit, and then we will look ahead to what's next at the Giro, what is going to take place at the Giro in between now and the next time you hear from myself, Dane Cash, and bike racing analyst extraordinaire Cosmo Catalano. Before we go any further, I have two things to say, and those things are: one, if you're not a member, head on over to escapecollective.com/join and become one. And two, go play our fantasy game. It's quite straightforward, doesn't require a whole lot of learning. You just pick one rider for every stage of the race. And you can only pick that rider one time across 21 days. And they accrue points for you based on where they finish. It's very simple, very fun. We've got mini leagues you can play with your friends. It's fantasy.escapecollective.com. And like all good fantasy games, it keeps you fully engaged, I think, as the race unfolds. So head on over to fantasy.escapecollective.com and get involved. All right, let's talk Giro. First two stages since the race rolled out from Venaria Real on the outskirts of Turin. What is the headline so far, Cosmo?
There's an old Dennis Green interview from
that's American football coach.
He famously and somewhat cryptically shouted, "They are who we thought they were." And I got a very similar vibe watching the first two stages of this year's Giro. This was also turned into a beer commercial. I think we saw what we expected to see in a way that was interesting and exciting and fun. I don't think it necessarily led to a different result. But
I agree that it was interesting and exciting and fun, even if the outcome after 2 days was maybe as expected. Is the that Dennis Green is referring to in this analogy, is that Tadej Pogačar? Because there were a number of riders who weren't who we thought they were, I think, that maybe some people had higher expectations.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the general kind of shape of the general classification. I think we saw an Ineos team that looked pretty good. I think we saw a UAE team that looked pretty good. And that's what I was expecting. That's what we got. That kind of, in a weird way, though. Like, it was that the first stage, an alternate headline for the first stage might be that escalated quickly. Because it really did sort of spiral out of hand.
How was the race won? How was stage one, and then also how was stage two won?
Well, so stage one, we have a stage one where there's no prologue, so this is kind of the start of the race. There are
definitively, it is the start.
It's the start of the race. There are two major climbs. The first 66K to go, you kind of see UAE come to the front and control the race, as you might expect on the first day. And the fact that the gap actually went out as they were doing this from about 2 minutes to about 3 minutes. There's a sprint, 34K to go. Alpecin winds it up. I think Jonathan Milan ends up taking it, but then UAE comes forward again to lead up the next climb. And instead of controlling it, they just completely smashed the race. I mean, 30K to go, heading up a hill. It is lined out, like a single file line of racers. Lilian Kalmajan goes out solo from the break. The field has him in sight at the KOM. They don't catch him. They kind of come down the hill, things slow down. Max Schachmann attacks. A bunch of other people kind of go up the road with him. If from this mess, Nicola Conti of Alpecin de Koenig goes solo. Pogačar attacks out of the peloton. The only person who can follow him is Jonathan Narvaez from Ineos. Eventually, Schachmann kind of grinds his way across. 3.1K to go. They catch Conchi. Pogačar attacks. Narvaez closes again. Schachmann rejoins in the descent, and Pogačar really just seemed to want to ride hard for no particular reason, and with no.
I mean, maybe he assumed that it would drop them. He likes to ride hard. Other people don't often keep up with him.
Yeah, but it's at the same time like this isn't a mountain, right? There's no like huge climb. This isn't even La Redoute. This is a relatively tactical finish with 3 riders, and you just. Even before that, it was a relatively small group with like 12 riders.
And he clearly wanted to win the stage, too. We should point that out. I mean, you'll see all the time a GC rider will ride in a way that helps their GC position, even if it maybe means like worsening their chances of winning the stage. But I think Pogačar was very clear that he wanted to win this stage. So maybe it was a little strange because, some of the GC rivals had been dropped. Actually, several of the GC rivals had been dropped. So that would make sense. Except, if he wanted to win the stage, it was a sort of a strange way to...
Yeah. It wasn't like he was just trying to get a time gap. In fact, I think maybe these first 2 days he wasn't trying to get a time gap. But I will talk about that on stage 2. He wanted to win, and he really just kept accelerating, and that was all he was going to do. And the thing is, when you accelerate at 200 meters to go, usually you don't win. All of our previous discussion of when in doubt, lead it out aside. He basically let out Narvaez, who came around him to win. And in fact, Schachmann even passed him on the line for second. So he didn't get as many bonus seconds as he was expecting.
And for Narvaez, that's his second Giro stage win. I think he's a rider who we saw him do quite well at the Tour Down Under this year. He's a sort of classic sometimes rider. I feel like he's been trying to find his niche. And I think he kind of has shown that these sort of punchy stages like this, he was able to stay with Pogačar. And as you said, he was kind of the only one. And that's pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of people not be able to do that.
It wasn't even like he fought to do it. He got on his wheel and hung on his wheel and looked great, looked amazing. I think the type of climb really kind of suits him too. Neither of the climbs on this day were huge, right? They were like Cat 2 climbs. But yeah, rode great.
Yeah, and Pogačar was disappointed to have not won the stage, but he did, as we hinted at, he put some time on some of his rivals, and I don't even know if you would say he put time into, because some other riders just lost a boatload of time. I think most notably Romain Bardet, who lost almost a minute. Nairo Quintana lost almost a minute. Mike Woods was gone way before the end, so he lost a bunch of time. There are actually several riders who just kind of they're if they had gone into this race thinking they were going to be challenging for the overall, that was quickly dispelled. Tiemann Aaronsman was probably the biggest one to me. Bardet runs kind of hot and cold, I feel like. I think with him, I am not shocked to see him lose a bunch of time. I think I had some hopes for him, but it's also not a shock. With Aaronsman, I feel like, at his age, you would think that he's just going to take the step-by-step approach and get better every year. He was already pretty good at the Giro last year. He's a rider that Ineos said they were, kind of second option for the team here. He was 6th of the Giro last year. Already on the first stage, he was a minute and a half. He was pretty far down. I was surprised.
I mean, the thing is, Ineos, pretty clearly racing for Thomas, right? And Aaronsman's good. He's proven that he's good. He's proven he can ride well 3 weeks into a race. And I almost feel like there's a little bit of kind of pre-Vuelta Sepp Kuss here, where they have one guy, one climbing domestique kind of come in not super peaked. And certainly after today's results, or these first two stages results, that may be where Aaron Smith's role with the team is the most would be the most beneficial. Now, whether he'll ride like that, I don't know, but he definitely, never seemed totally in it. I think Magnus Sheffield was right up kind of in the mix a couple of the days, at least in terms of keeping Thomas in a good position. But yeah, I think the first stage is always a little weird, and to see it ruptured so aggressively and so surprisingly, it's not I don't think it's so surprising. I actually think it might be more surprising that more people didn't get cut out, especially when you had this field that was a single file line. So it's not just the performance of the potential GC candidate. It's the performance of every single rider in front of that potential GC candidate. Any little gap, any flat tire, touch of wheels, whatever, that can be a gap that you're not going to be able to close. So it'll be interesting to see how some of the time gaps from this first day hold up as we get more into the race.
The UAE team has some heavy hitters with Rafael Majka, backing Pogacar, his teammates. Rafael Majka, Mikkel Bjerg, big engines. But it's also not, this. I would say this is not a Visma at the Vuelta or Visma at the Tour 2 years ago squad. This is a good team, but maybe not an awesome team. I was surprised actually. They did a lot of damage from a little ways out in the stage one finish, and yet, I do wonder. We're gonna constantly see them. I know because Tadej Pogacar is in pink after the second stage, which we'll get to, and they're going to be put to the test. This team.
It was interesting. It's interesting to note. Yes, they did blow the stage one up very early, but also Pogacar was alone.
Yep.
And that's maybe one of the reasons why he had this, I'm just going to go hard and see who can follow me. And I honestly thought his attack kind of 3K to go, where he really did try to get away from everybody, make that final separation, not just win out the group down, but get away clear. He did it kind of at the bottom of the hill, coming around a corner into the climb, and all the motos were up the road. There was no moto on the front of the group. So the only way to see it was from the chopper. And you could barely tell what was going on. It would have been really hard to relay information from the team car to someone in that group being like, hey, Pogacar's going, you need to move up, you need to get there.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't say it was totally guileless on Pogacar's part, but at the same time, he was very much, it was not, it was really the car had no steering wheel. It was just push the gas harder, push the gas harder, push the gas harder. So,
and that's worked for him in the past. Yeah. It didn't work on stage one. Jonathan Narvaez took the win. Stage two, how was it won?
Well, I'm going to start by saying that it was really silly that the stage started on a velodrome. And I don't know if you've ever been on a velodrome, but there's a bank and there's a certain speed at which you cannot go below, or your pedal will hit the ground and you'll fall down. And so the neutral start of this race, with still almost 200 riders in it, happened on the apron, which is maybe 2 riders wide. I think actually Simon Clark and another guy from Israel Premier Tech were joking about it, kind of sitting still at the back of the group, waiting for it to slowly parade out of this. And the thing is, a lot of the riders who are wanting to get in the break are not going to be staged at the front of the field. And yes, it's a neutral start. They go from this velodrome onto the road. But at the same time, if you're at the back of the group and there's 180 people in front of you, it doesn't matter that it's neutral. There's still 180 bodies you got to get through. So it really made it hard, I think, for a lot of riders who wanted to get in the breakaway, who are these small Italian teams. This is their only time to shine. Why would you start the race like that? It looks cool on TV, but start them in the infield and just go straight out of the velodrome. Don't do the little teeny tiny.
What about a grid start in a velodrome?
You know what? That could actually be pretty cool, but you'd have to seed the grid the right way. Right? I don't think you can seed it by GC, which might be against the rules for the UCI. I don't know.
I think you just normally seed it by who's from the town you're starting in, and then also yellow jersey, rainbow jersey. That's what you usually see. All right, yeah. So on to the racing action.
Outside the less than optimal start, this transpired much more like a standard kind of Grand Tour day. Ineos. To their credit, they had the pink jersey. They rode mostly in defense of the pink jersey. UAE shared some work. But coming into the climb, we had Ineos around 11K to go, ramp things up. Maybe about a K later, you see Pogačar kind of at the back of the group with his hand up, and he's got a front flat tire, and the assumption is that the team car said, hey, go around the corner and then we'll give you a change. And so he attempted to go around the corner on a flat, tubeless front tire. You can guess what happened next. Tire comes off, sealant goes out. Pogačar falls down, almost gets run over by the team car. He didn't, which is good. And the proximity of the team car made it a very fast bike change. Less than a K later, he's back in the group.
Also, very, very cat-like. I mean, he got up really quick. I was very impressed with his ability to go down.
I think he was upset. There's definitely a little bit gesturing.
Yeah, adrenaline was. Yeah,
I listened to the ambient audio to see if I could pick up anything, but it was really. I think he was just like,
Also, great shot of the sealant coming out of the tire. It was nice to get camera right there and have that. I feel like you don't see that often.
It's kind of a
race.
Purple sealant too. Like it was like I feel like
it was very bright.
I feel like someone on Geek Warning could tell us what particular brand of sealant that was and whether or not it was sponsor correct for the team. Because as I learned at the Mont Saint Anne World Cup, there is a lot of sealant and especially in mountain bikes, inserts that are optimized for conditions and not necessarily for sponsor relations.
Not for sponsors. Interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Well, Pogačar hit the deck, got back up quickly, bike change, back into the group very quickly.
To the front very quickly, UAE into smash mode very quickly. Behind him, Ineos was there. Like I said, Magnus Sheffield was up there, keeping Thomas supported. Narvaez was there. Definitely, he was at the back of their group, like he was set up as a GC guy. Around 5K to go, Pogačar is down to Rafał Majka. They seem to actually have a pretty extensive discussion about when they wanted to do the thing that they do, but eventually Majka pulls off, Pogačar attacks. Ben O'Connor, God love him, went right to Pogačar's wheel, went as hard as he possibly could. Basically everyone else was like, you know what, Pogačar's really fast. We're gonna hang out here for a second. Eventually, I think Thomas kind of comes up to O'Connor's wheel. O'Connor is flicking his arm, yelling at him. He's not coming through to help. Meanwhile, Pogačar up the road, he got the first 10, 15 seconds pretty quickly and then seemed to settle in. I kind of wonder, I'll talk about it at the end, but I kind of wonder whether he was trying to gain a ton of time or just get some space, establish a lead. Anyway, behind him, about 12 people came together at one point. Lipowitz of Tour de Romandie fame kind of came forward and set pace, did a really good job.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah, it's solid. Where's my notes here? It's probably about 2K of work for Dani Martinez. O'Connor, about 2K to go, really, really kind of cracked. I think paid the consequences of his bravery for taking on Pogačar. I think there were about 7 people coming into the sprint behind Pogačar. Thomas, known for getting those bonus seconds, couldn't quite get around. Martinez
did get some bonus seconds.
He was in third.
Yeah,
Martinez in second.
Martinez, by the way, had looked in really bad position not long before that. He was pretty far down midway up the climb, but he managed to kind of weave his way through, and I guess paced himself in sort of the opposite, very much the opposite of Ben O'Connor.
Yep. Yes. There was a lot. Like you look at a guy like Kian Otterbrooks. He was the only Visma Lisa bike rider in the group, probably from 7-8K out, like a big group, 30 or 40 people. And he, in that situation, if you don't have a teammate to keep you up front, you're doing a lot of work to fight for that like super plum position, a wheel or two down from Pogačar. And you're pretty sure that when Pogačar goes, you're not going to be able to keep up, right? So I think there's something to be said for, as much as I am a like position is everything kind of guy, I think there's something to be said for having a informed expectation of how the field is going to, how the race is going to go down, and having that plan. Well, you can't be right there. You can't be right in position. What am I going to do? Pogačar is going to go up. A bunch of people are going to explode. I'm slowly ramp up my effort to what I can sustain for the remainder of this course, and, pick my way through the wheels. Because outside of the pitch where Pogačar attacked, which I think was about 11, 12%, it's not that steep a climb. There's actually a little descent kind of midway through. So it is a finish at Europa that kind of lends itself to this more tactical kind of regroup riding and attacking, and that may have been part of why Lipowitz's lead out or Lipowitz's pace setting for Martinez was so effective. That it was a climb where you had a lot of draft advantage.
In the end, Pogačar had a 27-second gap over the first chasing group, which was led by, as you said, Martinez and then Geraint Thomas in third. Thomas also, I think it was right after the Pogačar's crash, got 2 bonus seconds at a little sprint spot. So he did pick up a fair few bonus seconds on the day. Canny riding from the veteran. And so, after 2 stages, one of which was won by Tadej Pogačar, Pogačar has a 45-second GC gap to both Thomas and Martinez, who are together in second and third on time. Keanu Interbrooks in fourth, 54 seconds down, right ahead of, on the same time, Einar Rubio from Movistar. I think Tadej Pogačar being in the lead is no surprise. There were, however, some, surprises, maybe talking points for sure. I don't think Pogačar feels like any more likely to me to win the Giro than he did 2 days ago, which is very likely already.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. He didn't get a huge gap on stage 2. And maybe that was intentional.
I'm not entirely sure he wanted a huge gap. I think he's going to race the Giro and then he's going to race the Tour. This is super early, even if you're just racing the Giro. He's got a good gap now where, like, if he wants the lead, he can hold it, but it's not going to take a crazy wild day for him to hand off the lead to someone else, right? If a good break goes up the road, 12 riders, some strong guys, and UAE doesn't help set pace, I think it's very unlikely any other teams are going to get forward and be like, yeah, well, maybe on a sprint day, but on a rolling day, on a hard day, I think UAE has the ability to give the race lead away if they don't want it. Plus, if he gets too big a lead too early in the race, I think you will see other teams conspire to try and blow things up. He's definitely shown that he is a little bit vulnerable to that sort of game playing. We saw it at the 2022 Tour. We saw it a little. You could see shades of it, honestly, in stage 1, where all he could do was ride harder. That was kind of the only trick he could play. And even with a 3 or 4 minute lead, not that he could get that on these 2 stages, but even with a huge lead, he can still be kind of lured into that game playing. And so I think this is the ideal margin for him. I think it's the right margin for him. Some of the reasons I think he didn't try to get as much time as he could was that he wasn't, again, this was a flatter climb in some sections, and he was riding really upright. At times he was looking back. He shot some snot rockets at one point, just he's still going hard. He's still riding, at threshold, but he wasn't absolutely crushing himself, killing himself, trying to wring every second out of that effort.
When you mentioned breakaways and taking the jersey, and it reminded me of a rider who got into a breakaway and did quite well for himself on GC at the Tour a few years ago, who was one of those who, probably the most spectacular of the blow-ups on stage 2, because he was close to Pogačar for a little while, and that's Ben O'Connor. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Ben O'Connor's ride today. We're recording on Sunday, so when I say today, I mean stage 2, Sunday. Because I think it was a ride that, I have a couple of thoughts. The first thing I'm going to say might not ingratiate me with our Aussie listeners, and I apologize. But I was not shocked to see Ben O'Connor lose some time. I didn't have that high hopes for him. I don't know that I have seen enough from him as a GC rider yet to be really fully confident in him. And I wish that weren't true. He seems like a great guy, but it is what it is. The other side of that, though, is I think he deserves a lot of credit from a certain kind of fan for the way that he rode today. So there are fans out there, and I don't think you and I are not these people, I don't think, because we've talked enough. But we've talked about how I don't think, for instance, I don't think you and I blamed Team Sky for riding in the way that they did when it won them all those Tours de France. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fans out there who hate the metronymic, numbers-focused, and I think those fans who complain should at least be happy with the way that Ben O'Connor rode, because he just went all in trying to chase Tadej Pogačar when there were a lot of other people who probably said to themselves, yeah, that's not going to work. I'm going to ride my own pace and see what happens. Mm-hmm. At least he tried. I don't even think it's a great plan, but I think there's a lot of people out there who complain that there's not enough of that. And I just hope they were watching so that they could see Ben O'Connor and know that he's the rider they should be rooting for.
Yeah, I mean, I believe I got royally flamed for suggesting that Mathieu van der Poel should try, who, by the way, is imminently more qualified to try and hold Pogačar's wheel up something that maybe he can't hold it up than Ben O'Connor is. I was mad that Van der Poel didn't try to follow Pogačar. And my madness, though, was more at the fact that he didn't have a plan. You know, he didn't anticipate that Pogačar would do the thing that Pogačar said he was going to do and come up with some way to minimize that impact and maybe come around and win the race. And where I kind of draw the line between that criticism and criticism of Ben O'Connor here was I don't know that O'Connor had a plan. Like, did he really believe that, you know, was he looking down at his cycle computer and seeing numbers that he thought he could hold for 5K?
Well, this is a really good point to bring up. And if you watched in the U.S. on Max, or if you watched Eurosport, then if you stayed around, you will have heard a pretty similar conversation on the post-race show, because Orla was basically kind of saying what I'm saying, which is this guy deserves credit for the way that he rode, and she was glad that he rode that way. It made it entertaining, and it did. Again, I don't even know that I think it's a smart way to ride, but it made it entertaining, so thanks for entertaining us, Ben O'Connor. And then, some of the rest of the crew were suggesting, that's Robbie McEwen, Adam Blythe, and Dan Lloyd, were suggesting, well, he kind of should have known if his number, like, he's looking down at his numbers, like, he should know whether he can or can't go. And of course, the point is, he wasn't, or he didn't care. And again, that's more entertaining, but it's maybe not the most tactical way to ride. And we saw obviously the final result is he lost the time.
He must have felt good, right? He must have felt good. He did come off of Pogačar's wheel relatively quickly. I think the way he was able to ride until about 2K to go suggests he still had something. The point where I get confused is when he's now separated from Pogačar. Thomas is sitting on his wheel. He's flailing his arm, looking back at Thomas and yelling. And Geraint Thomas clearly not going to help him out here. Like, at this point, why are you pulling up a guy whose basically whole shtick is hang on with the group and then be faster than everyone else in the last 200 meters of the stage? Why are you towing him up the mountain? Like, make him do some work. He'll probably help out at least a little bit. You can recover, see who else is in the group. You know, he probably would have been seventh in that sprint for second, but he would have had the time.
Right, the time is
Right. So like once you can't get away from the Thomas group, like, you should be kind of on the game plan where you're going to sit in the Thomas group and try not to get gapped before that sprint to the line.
I do kind of assume that Lipowitz's pace probably didn't help. I think it was a pretty hard pace, and he was probably pretty gassed from trying to go with Pogačar.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
Thomas said that though after the stage, didn't he? He basically said he felt bad that he didn't work with Ben.
Thomas, I love. He's always been a pretty straightforward interview, but now he's just like he just says whatever is on his. He's talking about how bad the radios were today. Like, the terrain made it really tough to tell what was going on. But yeah, I mean, even knowing that he would apologize to me after the stage, I would still, after 2 or 3 arm flicks, kind of be like, okay, all right, I'm gonna,
you get it.
Yep.
O'Connor lost at the end. I mean, he didn't lose relative to a lot of people that much time. He finished 120. He's 124 down on GC now. He finished exactly 1 minute down on Tadej Pogačar. So all things considered, not a huge loss.
Bardet was 30 seconds back over where he could have otherwise been. But
exactly. And Timo Ahrensman, the rider I was talking about a little earlier, 136 down. There's worse riders who we thought would do well. So yeah, at the end of the day, he rolled the dice. It didn't work out. Maybe he should have known better, but also, good on him for trying. It was entertaining to watch him try. Thomas is doing exactly what I think he should be doing. He's riding like exactly the race he should be riding. It's not as exciting, but I think Thomas has he's got the wherewithal to know that his best chance is to just sort of grind his way through all these climbs. And hey, if Pogačar crashes again, then guess who's going to be sitting there ready to? Well, it'll not only be Geraint Thomas, it'll also be Danny Martinez at the moment. But yeah, I think sort of playing that steady card, which has served him well in the past, Geraint Thomas, is going to serve him well here.
Yeah, I don't even know that it's not exciting, right? It's exciting in a different way because there are times where you see that initial attack go and Thomas doesn't respond. You're like, is he cooked? And then you see him like kind of grinding, get the diesel moving, and it's like the gap is stabilizing. It's going out less quickly. You see other people join the group. They're going to work together. It isn't as explosive and as fiery, but you're constantly, maybe this is again a thing for just fans like us, but you're constantly kind of refactoring in your head what the race situation is, what this is going to do to the GC picture. And then, there are times when that group comes around a corner and maybe there's two riders in front of them and they're not working together. And Thomas launches a big, tracky sprint basically. And the gap is 0 seconds at the line. Like that is pretty exciting, I think, even if it isn't the kind of Pantani explosiveness that people like to wave their fists at and get excited about.
Right. Yeah. All right. We're going to come back to the Giro. We're going to talk about what's coming up. But first, we're going to shift focus west, still in the Mediterranean basin, but to Spain. Let's take a quick break. All right, so La Vuelta Femenina, Vuelta España Femenina, is officially in the books. What's your headline for La Vuelta Femenina?
Demi Vollering contact speculation to drive women's cycling narrative to the Tour de France Femmes.
I think it will.
Yeah,
yeah, and great because who doesn't love a little contract speculation? I mean, I do. The funny thing is, she won the race quite handily.
Yeah,
she won the race
I don't think team support was necessarily lacking, but it was not the
it was just weird.
SD Works pushing everyone around, kind of riding.
So maybe high level stuff because again, the Wheel Talk's going to do a lot more, and I know Abby's got a lot of thoughts on this. Abby wrote a whole article about
it's good, a good article. I don't necessarily agree with the conclusion, but I think the argument is well presented.
Head on over to escapecollective.com to check that out. But basically, there's reason to ponder what is going on at SD Works. And it's not just what happened at the Vuelta on a couple of stages. It's many, many things over the past few months. And honestly, if you look back at the team's past, you can go back 10 years. This is kind of a frequent occurrence. Danny Stam always manages to find a way to put together winning teams. But basically, there were one or two days at the Vuelta where Demi Vollering was riding on the front while still having teammates in the group for stretches of time. And as the clear, obvious leader of the team, or you would think, and the clear, obvious favorite to win the race, that's a little bit strange. You may have, whether you agree or not that that's the right call, or it was just unusual to see. You don't usually see the race leader and the team leader doing all the work when they have teammates. So it makes one wonder about the dynamic within the team. And yet, at the same time, she won the race by almost 2 minutes. And she won 2 stages. It wasn't particularly close. And so it was a very interesting situation where, and I think, again, it's just going to fuel contract speculation because she's such a good rider. She showed that she's such a good rider. And yet the team performance as a whole was just sort of strange.
And I think it was a really good bounce back from a spring that was, by any reasonable standard, good, but not what Vollering has done in the past.
Right,
and
right.
None of that. I saw none of that during her race throughout the entire week. It was just like she just came down from altitude camp, no bad taste in her mouth, and went out and basically rode the race she needed to ride and beat everyone else up. And
stages 5, 6, and 8, particularly 5 and 8, were the ones where she got the biggest gaps. Mm-hmm. They were the mountain stages. She was pretty clearly the best climber in the race. And I think she did what she had to do, which is just ride hard, even if it meant her riding sometimes when her teammates were still there, which is, again, strange. But at the end of the day, yeah, she sort of put you can't call them the demons because she was like on the podium in 4 different races this spring, 4 different races this spring. So obviously she was fine in the spring, but second at La Flèche-Wallonne and third at Liège is not quite Demi Vollering quality. So whatever was going on, she put that to rest with a pretty dominant Vuelta. Anybody else kind of surprise you or impress you?
Rayan Marcus rode really well the last day, kind of in the chaos behind Vollering.
She finished second overall. She was third on that last stage, and I mean, heck of a race for Visma, the team in general, to put a rider in second on the GC with Rayan Marcus, and then to win some stages with Marianne Vos, who did what she does. She won the kinds of stages that she should win. It was, I mean, that's kind of true on a number of different levels. There were some surprising, well, maybe not surprising winners, but if you looked at like stage 6, for instance, it seemed like Demi Vollering it looked like this. I don't know if this is true, but it looked like she just decided, all right, I'm just going to ride really hard and try to put time on everybody else. And, whatever, the stage is whatever. And Evita Music won in the end, beat her for the stage.
Convincingly,
Yeah. But it was like, again, it was like, well, Demi Vollering won the whole race, so maybe she just doesn't care. It was just strange.
That was, if I'm Kostya Niewiadoma, if I'm someone who's going to challenge Vollering on GC, I am looking at those stage finishes as a spot where maybe I can get some time, because she got solidly beat in that those like 3 or 4 bike lengths in 50 meters or something like that.
Yeah, Music, who is 24, so pretty young, and one of several strong riders on the FDJ Suez squad. Before we close the book on our Vuelta thoughts and head over, and you hopefully head over to Wheel Talk, I'll just point out that there was an American stage winner, Kristen Faulkner, won stage 4 in Zaragoza, and did it with a nice little attack. And I think for Faulkner, it's got to be. She's had results. She's had plenty of results, but I feel like in the last 2 years or so, it's been smaller races and coming close, and this had to feel good. So I think good on her for getting that big win.
She's gotten a lot better at riding her bike on EF. I don't know what the situation was at Jayco, but she spent a lot of time on the ground last season, and she's been well positioned and not having those problems this year. So
and she's won some races this year already, and this is by far the sort of the biggest stage. She had done quite well at some smaller races, but I think that's, and I know you in the past.
She won Von Het Hagelen by like 3 minutes or something, because she rode away and nobody went with her, and then they were like,
I guess in a situation like that, you don't get to see as much of the improvement of like the bike handling stuff. The racecraft or whatever.
You could compare the corners she was taking kind of solo with the corners the group was taking, and it wasn't like she wasn't losing time there. So
right, yeah. All right, head on over to Wheel Talk this week for plenty more Vuelta coverage, and like I said, there's some sweet bonus Wheel Talk action for you to listen to with some audio diaries from riders at the race. The other sort of around the league, I know this is not relevant to cycling, but it's what people say about other sports. Eschborn-Frankfurt, which happened on Wednesday. Just a couple of quick thoughts. First, racing is way more fun when you don't just hand it to the sprinters on a silver platter. So sorry, sprinters, but I was glad with this new Eschborn-Frankfurt route. We got some interesting racing. In the past, it has been the Alexander Kristoff in a sprint show, and that was not the case this year. So 1, better racing thanks to a route change with some more climbs. 2, Maxime Van Hils makes me look good for saying that he was the kind of one of the riders who came out of the spring as a breakthrough performer. 3, Riley Sheehan took a podium finish in the race, and then went on to, what was he, 4th at Tropez-Leon? He was. Is that a heck of a spring?
He wasn't just 4th at Tropez-Leon. Like, he was driving a move with Arnaud Delis.
Eventual winner Arnaud Delis.
Yes, eventual winner Arnaud Delis. Like, to within the final kilometers. Like, he wasn't just sitting on and hoping it would be a sprint. He was attacking and aggressive and still sprinted okay in the end. So yeah, I mean, he, there's a how the race was won on Paris Tour last year, where you can see more about how well he can ride.
At least one good thing, maybe more, but at least one good thing came out of the NCL. Lastly, drone shots are cool, was my takeaway from Eschborn-Frankfurt. They had some tracking drones in that urban circuit in Frankfurt, and I was quite entertained, and I want more of that. So yeah, I don't know. If anybody's listening who has the ability to give us more of those, please. All right. What's coming up at the Giro? Let's talk about the next few days of Giro d'Italia action in between now and the next time you hear from us. The big overarching theme of the next few days is sprinters. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They all look like they could be for the sprinters, especially Monday, Tuesday, but I think Wednesday too. And as of right now, when we're recording, I don't know that we have an obvious sprint favorite. I know who I think is the favorite. I think Jonathan Milan.
Oh, no. That was the same thing I was going to say.
Well, that's okay. We can agree sometimes.
But with Sports Talk Radio.
Oh, I know. Oh, you think it's Milan? No way. What? No way. He was so good last year. He's only gotten better this year. He's shown a little bit more versatility this year. Yeah, I think Milan, and he's got a great team here in this race. I've been impressed. Well, I am impressed with Trek's lineup, Lidl Trek's lineup. I think Olav Koy is, to me, maybe the other big one. Tim Merlier is, it's those three, maybe at the top. But that's when we're recording. That's on Sunday. Honestly, by the time we less than 12 hours tomorrow. From now.
You basically have set it in stone.
Yeah, exactly. 12 hours from now, there's going to be a winner of this stage. And then all of a sudden, we're going to be talking about that's the sprinter to watch at the Giro. So anything we're saying now, it's, maybe it's Caleb Ewan. Could be Binyam Girmay.
In the sprints that looked like sprints, the intermediate sprints that looked like sprints, Milan has looked very good. Olaf Koy had a crash today, and it was like, all right, well, it's an uphill finish. Pretty sure I'm going to make the time cut, so I'll see you guys. Right. Yeah. Back on the bus.
Caden Groves, Fabio Jakobsen, also worth watching. I mean, Jakobsen's a tricky one to predict because when he has been at his best, he's been one of the best in the world. But he's not had a great start to the year, and he's just been hard to. Yeah, it's hard to predict. It's what I said it was. But that's next 3 days. We're going to see those riders, and maybe some that we haven't mentioned here, contesting, and maybe we'll have a sense of who's kind of sitting at the top as the race makes its way out of the northwestern corner of Italy. So after 3 probable sprinters stages, we get an interesting stage 6 in Tuscany. And if there's one thing that Tuscany is known for in the bike racing world these days, in 2024, it's those gravel roads that it has. And hey, look, we're going to be racing on some gravel on stage 6. 3 sections of gravel, some hilly roads. It's going to hopefully do what we like to see on gravel and climbs, break things up. The guy who won Strade Bianche this year happens to be at this Giro d'Italia. He's already in pink. Will he win the stage? I don't know, but it's going to be fun to watch.
I would expect him to try and get time on people. Even though I did spend some time saying maybe he'll give the jersey away, that doesn't mean that he still couldn't take 2 or 3 minutes out of someone who is unlucky or just bad at riding gravel through this stuff. So
it's funny how with this rider, with Tadej Pogačar, a stage that I think this would be true of like a Roubaix stage of the Tour. For many Grand Tour riders, specialists, we might say, oh, that's that one stage. You never know what could happen. Whereas with Pogačar, it's like, oh, that one stage. I wonder how much time he'll put into everybody because he has that versatility. He's the guy who won Strade. He's won the Tour of Flanders. Anyway, he'll be certainly in the mix, I would think. Immediately following stage 6 will be a time trial. They will race 40K, which is in 2024 a not short time trial. It's got a bit of a climb at the end, but I think it will be mostly a power guy kind of thing. Wouldn't you know it, Tadej Pogacar is pretty good at time trials too, but I think this could be a day that Geraint Thomas is hoping he'll sort of separate himself from everybody else. That's something he's quite good at.
I remember the last time trial that comes to mind for Tadej Pogacar for me did not end well for him.
It's true.
I mean, it ended well, but it ended poorly against the one person it battered.
Right. It was like he was pretty far ahead of the field minus one guy. Mm-hmm. And that one guy is not here. So not only is he not here, but neither are several other maybe riders of that caliber. I would think Pogacar has to perform pretty well in the
Are there
Giro.
several other riders of that caliber?
Well, I was thinking of
like,
Primož Roglic and Remco Evenepoel
like,
as TT guys. 2 guys. Okay. Yeah. Well, 3 if you include Vingegaard. All right. So those guys aren't here. The following day, man, there's a lot of GC days in a row after this stretch of sprint stages. Tough mountain stage. It's the first 5-star difficulty stage, according to the Giro organizers. It's not going to be the hardest stage of the Giro, but it's a short and mountainous and finishing with a Cat 1, pretty steep Cat 1 climb to Prati di Tivo. I would think the stage itself could be a breakaway kind of stage. We'll see, but it's definitely going to have GC implications. That's Saturday, so if you're trying to plan your week, just know that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all of those days could be GC days. Sunday's stage, I think we're back to either sprint or breakaway into Napoli, before we get a rest day. So by the time you hear from us again, the Giro will be in between Naples and the following stage. The Tuesday stage starts in Pompeii, which obviously has a lot of cool history. Well, I shouldn't say cool history. A lot of history behind it.
It's not too soon anymore, Dane. I think we can say that it's cool, even though a lot of people died, and in fact,
it's cool
died
how
hot.
well preserved it is. That's what that.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's a beautiful time capsule to a.
It is a beautiful time capsule.
Complex society with many lessons and examples to be avoided for modern times. Positive examples and things to be avoided for modern times.
Yeah. So that's what's happening in between now and the next time you'll hear from us. Lots of action to come and very exciting. I think that, and we've already seen it, but that the Giro has so much good stuff to offer within the first weekend change that exists before that first rest day. It's not just going to be well, there's going to be several sprinters days, but we started without sprinting for the first 2 days, and we're going to go back to GC action here soon too, which is it's nice.
I'm just waiting for a chance to bust out my favorite Bob Rollism, which is that no one rides slow like Italians when the sun comes out. So I'm hoping we get to see the breakaway of 2 from Italian wildcard teams get 8 minutes up the road while the group just kicks back and works on their tan lines, and then it's a good one because it's real.
True.
It happens every year. Like
yes.
You could keep up
and
with
more
the
at the Giro than the
peloton
Vuelta or the Tour
for a day or 2 of the Giro every year.
Yeah,
for the first third of the stage.
That's the Giro. That's what's coming up. The Itzulia women will be going on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, staying in that corner of the world for the women's peloton. And I think there's one more World Tour Women's race in Spain, Vuelta a Burgos, coming up after that. So if you're a fan of bike racing in Spain, it's a great time for that. So lots to talk about in between now and the next time you'll hear from us. But until then, enjoy the bike racing. I'm Dane Cash. Who are you?
I'm Cosmo. I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that was the How the Race Was Won podcast.